Welcome to episode 265 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent and Jason here as always. And this week we've got Brian Fair on here. This is a long time coming because this is another one of those ones we've talked about, that we've since the beginning. Yeah.
We should get this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brian Fair has definitely been one of those guys that we've always wanted to get on here. So glad that we could finally make it happen for our 5th year anniversary.
Right? From this day.
I believe it's actually this day.
Good.
This is.
You mean the 14th. day that we're fucking recording this today, or the day
the day that this is released, May 14th.
Released.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty positive. If it's not, it's the 15th. It's right around there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the closest episode to the day. So
you imagine 5 years ago if you said, "Hey, you guys will be doing a lot of these episodes." And 5 years you'll be doing one with Brian Fair during a goddamn national, global, fucking even pandemic.
That's right.
Where no one can go anywhere and shit. I mean, what would you have thought?
Yeah, I know. I would have laughed and said, okay, maybe we could have got Brian Fair, but there's not going to be a global pandemic.
And look.
Right. We've mentioned the name Brian Fair several times, but if you're not familiar for some weird reason and you didn't see it there on the title, he is, of course, the singer of Shadows Fall. He's the singer of Hell Night. What else?
Downpour, Overcast. Overcast is like legendary, early, hardcore, post-hardcore, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Brian Fair, Mike D from Killswitch Engage.
This is back before either one of them
or
those bands came
right on.
At least to the level we know them.
Yeah. But most of you know Shadows Fall. If not, you've at least heard the name. Ozfest, middle 2000s, they were big. Of all those bands that came out around that era, I think they were my favorite. I'm pretty sure they were your favorite.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, definitely. They're the one that I kind of latched on to.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, that they've been talking about doing stuff again. And he talks about that in this interview.
Definitely. That made my day. And, it's like we love Shadows Fall and Killswitch Engage and Lamb of God and God Forbid and Unearth. Shadows Fall is our jam.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all that, we need to let you know we're sponsored by a few different people. Entities, so to speak. MedFarm is a dispensary located in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. 24683 East Highway 51, right there off the highway. They've got a great selection you can see on Leafly.com. You can pull in there, you can go inside, or you can text or call in your order ahead of time and drive right through the drive-thru, which is pretty amazing because a lot of dispensaries don't have that option. And another thing is a lot of dispensaries, pretty much any dispensary doesn't do, is 30% of their proceeds are going to build no-kill animal shelters. Their slogan is cannabis with a cause because of that. It's an awesome thing. We're very happy to be able to talk about that, and they're well on the way to getting that first one completed. So we'll let you know when that's done. In the meantime, if you go in there and tell them that you heard about them on Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order, which is very awesome. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at MedFarmOK. That's PHARM, and their website is medfarmok.com. DEB Concerts is a promoter right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Keeps bringing some amazing acts to Tulsa. Everyone from their first show at the Ideal Ballroom was Winger, clear up to Buck Cherry back here in February. All over the place. They even brought in Snoop Dogg and Nelly last year to the BOK Center. And they've got a few shows lined up this summer that are still on the books. So get on debconcerts.com to find out ticket info for these shows, which is Texas Hippie Coalition along with Poster Child and Sweatin' Bullets at the Ideal Ballroom on June 26th. Lynn Hernandez will be hosting that. July 11th. The New Metal Revival, Flaw, Edema, Paraman 5000, and headlined by Saliva. That's, of course, at the Ideal Ballroom as well. And then July 13th, Poison, all 4 original members, with Tom Kiefer of Cinderella and Sebastian Bach, of course, original singer for Skid Row. A triple bill there at the BOK Center for a big arena show. So get on debconcerts, like I said.com, or their Facebook to be kept up to date if there's any changes, and of course we'll let you know as well. And then Sunset Tattoo is a tattoo shop right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Their address is 3146 East 15th Street. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed and mother approved, which is a very high detail you need to keep track of because a lot of tattoo shops are not mother approved.
Right.
They're mother approved because Jake Thompson is a great dude, as well as everybody that works with him. So get over there. I say get over there. Today's the 14th. They're reopening on May 15th, which is tomorrow. So give them a call or stop by the shop right there to see all their work. You can also see it on Facebook and Instagram. They do great work, and now you can set up a time to get in there and tell them that we sent you. Like we said up front, Brian Fair is the guest, and we're going to play some music that he's a part of.
Yes.
We're going to play Hell Night, which is his current band that's based out of St. Louis. And this song is called Sleepwalker. Sleepwalker from Hell Night from their album Unlimited Destruction. That's the most recent album.
2019?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Oh, I love it. I love the just that kind of primal hardcore kind of thing it's got going on. Yeah. But it also has kind of this cool retro thing, with the guitar solo, that's not super overdriven. And his vocals are, you can definitely tell it's him, but he's going a little bit more caustic.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I've listened to this. I've listened to this whole record. It's really good. And I'm glad we could play it. Yeah.
So check out Hell Night if you're a fan of Brian Fair and you have not before. Like we said, also Downpour. We talked about that in the interview here coming up. They had a great album come out in 2018 that you need to check out. And of course, all the great Shadows Fall stuff. And you can find some old Overcast stuff as well. One other thing I wanted to mention before we delve into this is something we never talked about on the podcast. We just talked about on one of our Facebook Lives.
Yeah.
Was Murder in the Front Row.
Right.
And since, Shadows Fall kind of is they're not a thrash band, but they have a lot of thrash elements, So you could throw them in that category pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
And the Murder in the Front Row, if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. You can buy it on Amazon Prime for just a few bucks, or you can buy the DVD, I think, for 15 or 20 bucks. And it's just a really well put together documentary, because what we talked about is a lot of metal and rock documentaries sometimes miss the mark and kind of come off a little corny.
Mm-hmm.
But this one definitely does some justice to the early thrash scene in California.
Yeah, definitely. If you're, the drill, the whole San Francisco, Northern California, East Bay, Oakland, Dublin, whatever.
Yeah.
All that whole thing. I mean, this is exactly it. And they cover it with great detail, and they execute it flawlessly. There's so many documentaries. The biggest beef with a lot of my documentaries that I see is there's so much stuff left out.
Yeah.
Or, somebody will, some documentary will just leave out a whole era. It's like, what the fuck was that? But this kind of covered it all. It covered that whole time perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a documentary on thrash as a whole and throughout history. It's just the beginnings of where thrash kind of originated from.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a little bit about LA, from the bands you need to know, like Slayer and Metallica. Metallica moved, and
and there's a little bit about Anthrax, they delve into that a tad, but so they get it all.
Yeah, so definitely look into that. It's definitely worth checking out for sure. All right, let's do this. Like we said, Shadows Fall. What I love about them is that all 5 of these guys, once the band kind of went on hiatus, have been doing great things.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar, Brian kind of goes into it anyway, but we've got guys in Anthrax, Overkill, at one point Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah. Active Defiance.
Yeah.
They're great. We know that.
Yeah. We've had on Chris Broderick on here as well. Look into all the stuff these guys are doing, and let's just get into it right now. Here's Brian Fair. The obvious first question is just how have you been handling quarantine, and how's everything been going on your end?
It's been interesting to say the least. I'm weird, like as far as adjusting to a new kind of lifestyle between touring and being thrown in so many weird scenarios or being stuck somewhere for, like long amounts of time. I kind of adjusted to that side of it pretty quick. But for me, the positive has been just spending a ton of time with my family, really getting to make a ton of music, hanging with them, like just also my wife's business. She works from home, designs her own textiles. So we've gotten to focus on that. So there's been some positives, but it's just crazy. Like the guitar company I worked for had to shut down. So, all that, the impending financial doom and, nationwide pandemic is the scary part, but at least the positive side has been enjoying some time at home, which is nice.
Yeah. More time to...
How are you guys... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say more time to skate too, probably.
Yeah, and actually my daughter's been skating a ton and getting a lot better, and actually almost getting too brave, to where I have to start to get nervous. My little dude's trying to keep up. So yeah, we've been skating a ton. All the parks have closed though. I think one of the indoor ones doing some, like, you can book like a one-on-one session kind of thing, but that seems crazy. So, but luckily the weather's been up and down here, but it's been nice enough the last little bit to get out, and that makes a difference. If we had moved out of a 2-bedroom apartment, like about 2 years ago, so it would have been a whole different world if we weren't, had the backyard and been able to get outside a bit.
Right.
So I feel for anyone who's kind of stuck in the apartment style, that can probably get a little creepier, just the walls start closing in.
Right.
Yeah. If I was in an apartment, at least I would at least need a balcony, or I would probably go insane.
Yeah, totally. Just some fresh air sanctuary somewhere,
The other day we saw that post with the Zoom with all the metal guys in it, the Ozfest 2005. How was that? How did that come about?
That was such insanity. Like, imagine just all of a sudden I see a a phone, incoming call, and first it says Buzz McGrath, which immediately puts you on like, high alert. Because Buzz from Unearth is one of the, one of the funniest human beings alive. So, but then the names kept scrolling, and like most of them were in, my contacts. So I'm just seeing, Jim LaMarca from Chimera, John Campbell going by, and I'm like, this can't be happening, So, and I'd probably, was 7 or 8 Budweisers deep at that point anyway, at the end of the night, like sitting by the fire. So I was like, just totally primed and ready for that conversation. So, but it was also chaos where you could only hear each person for a minute. People were just bumping it out of the screen, like it was like the most metal high school reunion ever.
I know, yeah, one of the guys on that chat I saw was Florida Frank, and we just had him on the podcast this week. And I saw that.
Nice.
I saw that post that you made, I think it was last week, where you said that jokingly that you've probably seen Hatebreed more than your own bands.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, man, Overcast, my band before Shadows Fall, we played with Hatebreed right out of there, probably from like, their first few shows ever, because we used to play with Jamie's old band, Josta 14, before he started Hatebreed. So even in the, mid 90s, I was already playing shows or seeing Hatebreed. And then Shadows Fall, we became like almost brother bands with Hatebreed, where we toured a ton. We both recorded with Zeus, so we were just around. And then whenever they come through town, I still see them as well. Or if there was a festival, I'm going to go watch Hatebreed. So if I really calculated it, honestly, Shadows Fall played so many shows that I'm sure, that number is probably double. But it's scary how many times I've probably seen Hatebreed if I could see a number, And I'm probably stage dove at the same riff for like, 75% of those shows, depending, because sometimes the barricades were too far at the festivals, I'm not trying to Carl Lewis my way over like the, Vakken, like, barricade or something.
Right. What song or what riff was that?
What's that? When I wake up, the real nightmare begins. And when it comes in, that's my spot. So
that's how you knew.
just landing on someone right when the, boom, just, like it's on. So
yeah.
But there's a few times, but that one every time. So,
also on Instagram, you've been kind of going through some old collectible stuff and auctioning it off.
Yeah, I mean, well, the best thing about this too is finally going through the garage and the attic. Like I said, we moved less than 2 years ago, so we barely even gotten through half of the stuff. And I'm such a pack rat with that type of thing that it's crazy. So I'd find, a roll of like 15 posters or something. And I'm like, I don't need 15 of these. And, so I figured, it's a good time to start sharing some. Today's was super rare one where there was a Revolver magazine where it was me and Dave Mustaine on the cover for like a history of thrash. It was right when Threads of Life was had just come out. And they had these like posters where they literally did the like, paste on the construction, plywood walls in New York with. Okay. So they were like, kind of bigger, like promo posters. So those ones, I don't think those ever were anywhere outside of, we probably had a handful. I'm sure they sent a handful to the Megadeth camp. The rest were just, hung up places or, so that was cool to have something that wasn't like just a poster we used to sell or just, something like that. And this one was like, man, there's only a handful of these. So I always keep probably more than I even need to keep for myself, but if I got a few extra I can part with, I might as well. That one I only kept one and sold the other 2, so it's cool to kind of just clear some stuff out. Also, until we know, what's going to happen job-wise, might as well start keeping the cash flow going,
Yeah,
got to get all the side hustles, sell some merch, do some cameo videos, man. It's like, dude, I'll do singing telegrams as long as they're, I can stay social distancing away,
Yeah, sack that money away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what was Dave cool, or was that like a Photoshop deal where they just put both of you on there?
Yeah. All right, it was a pretty random story. Like, and honestly, it goes back. Me and Dave, I've hung out with, had the pleasure a few different times, but it's been up and down experiences. Like, somewhat. Just I think Dave's kind of known for if he's in a mood to kick it, he's totally gonna chill. If he's not gonna pretend that he does.
Yeah.
So we were walking in to this kind of like, big sort of hangar style, like, not Hangar 18, unfortunately, but a big hangar style, like photo shoot place, and he was walking kind of towards me and I hadn't really met him and I didn't want to just, roll up like, hey, it's so nice to meet you. So he just kind of rolled by and sort of looked and I just kind of did the like, what's up? With like the chin up, like kind of, hey dude, but without saying anything. And he just kept going. I was like, okay. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna not bother him today. So but then so I was waiting to like take the photo with him, but they actually didn't. They did it like separately, and then even though we were in the same building, kind of then put it together. So I don't know if what was happening there, but it was definitely an interesting first time. And then the next time I saw him, he was like super happy and chill and like kind of just psyched to see me. And I was like, all right, man, this dude's cool. And honestly, I was such a huge Megadeth fan, and I've gotten to know a few of the dudes who've been in and out of the bands over the years, and they're all awesome dudes. Like Dave Ethelson's one of the nicest, dudes in metal, and it's cool. Also, it just seems like Dave's probably in a better place than he's been a few times in the past as well these days. So I'm happy to see that he's healthy again as well. So
yeah,
but definitely a crazy experience. The first time is like super fan and being like, oh, Dave Mustaine, and I'm like, oh, did I just get an evil eye?
Yeah. Man, probably 10 years ago now, 10 or 12 years ago, we went to a meet and greet with Dave, and he was signing his book in a church of all places. It was kind of weird. You went up to the altar,
Yeah.
and he was sitting
crazy.
there at the table, and you walked across and got the signature and met him. But it was just an odd experience because the bookstore was so small they had to do it in a church.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yep, exactly.
So speaking of your own music, Hell Night, had some shows lined up that I saw had to get canceled, obviously, because of what's going on.
Yeah, it was a bum out. And we actually had a few weird runs of bad luck for our last couple shows, where the first one we were going to play the opening of this new club. The guys who ran a place called the Foo Bar were opening up a slightly bigger room across the street. And we were supposed to play the opening night, and the floor was, I guess, just not going to be ready in time. And we had already booked another show, so we couldn't do the reschedule of that because it was just too close to the other show. And then that show had to get canceled because of, just all the COVID stuff. So we kind of had a bad run there for the last two shows, and we hadn't been playing a ton recently. So we were really looking forward to getting on stage. And it's always good for me if I get to scream into a microphone. There's less chance I'm going to be screaming at everyone in my house. So, it's always good to get some of that out, Yeah. So I'm pent up on the live aggressive music front, which is rare for me. There's usually at least a Hell Night show or something happening. So after decades of getting to do it every night,
Yeah. When you got to St. Louis, how did you hook up with Hell Night? Was it something you were looking for? Did they seek you out?
No, totally as random as it could be. And probably one of the only ways I would have ended up in a band, especially at that time. At the time, I wasn't really looking to do too much. I'd been jamming with the Downpour guys kind of just via, email. And then whenever I was in Massachusetts, we'd practice. So I was kind of, writing those tunes. And Shadows Fall, we were pretty much done, but we were still, doing a couple things here and there as far as touring goes. And then I had gone to see Hell Night because the original singer, Mike, was friends with my wife. And we went and saw him just at a small little bar, and they were just blew me away. I was like, damn, this is like the local band I'm definitely going to, start checking out. And then I started skateboarding with the guitar player, Andy, just through another mutual friend who I met here and then started working with. So we were skating a bunch. And then when Mike decided to kind of leave the band, he just didn't really have the time to focus on it. They were just like, you want to jam? I'm like, I already knew the tunes. And that was probably the only band I would have joined. Maybe at some point I would have started something, but I definitely wasn't really looking to join a band. Mm-hmm. But it was such a perfect situation of dudes I had already kind of become friends with and seen a bunch. So it was perfect. And then we got super prolific right away, where we wrote a ton of tunes all at once. And we were like, yeah, this is going to work. And it's casual as far as we jam, maybe once a week, but take a good amount of weeks off and then play a show every few months. But it's been sick to just kind of keep the music thing going and writing some like just super gnarly tunes.
Yeah. The creative process between all these different projects and things that you've done, how does that differ? And between Downpour or Shadows Fall or Hell Night?
Yeah. Shadows Fall, we really wrote in a way where it was like Matt and John would come up with song structures, kind of work them out with Bittner. And then I would come in. Me and Matt would usually work on vocals somewhat together. I would usually have a skeleton, and then we'd work on some stuff. And then we may adjust the structure based on like the vocals. But it was usually a good, solid skeleton that those guys had riff-wise before we did anything. And then, honestly, we did pre-production. Shadows Fall we were such a full-time band that when we were in writing mode, we were writing a ton, doing a ton of work. Whereas with, Hell Night, it's like, we blast out a tune in a night or two. I write usually the lyrics while they're still finishing the tunes, maybe finishing them up over the next couple of days. And half the time we record them before we've even done anything like, to have a chance to change it. It's like almost like inspiration and then immediately get it on tape. And then, so it's way different. And then Downpour was super slow because we wrote it over like years where like we were just kind of sending files back and forth, and there was no rush because we weren't planning on like being like an active touring band or anything like that. We did play some shows. Unfortunately, distance was tough, and a few guys just had other life things to deal with. So, but that record did finally come out, where the vinyl was supposed to come out through Pledge Music, but we got caught up in that whole Pledge Music sham thing we luckily got enough money to get our CDs out and get people most of their stuff, but then the vinyl got kind of stuck up in that. So
yeah, that was a nightmare.
Oh, dude, what a mess. I was not gonna say I was skeptical at first, but I was like, I just had a weird feeling about it, and then but at the beginning everything was fine, and then right at the end it was just a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that Downpour album, I mean, like you said, you guys took a while on it. Like looking back on it now, about a year and a half later, like, I mean, how do you view that in your catalog of everything you've ever done?
Oh, it's some of the best singing I've ever done for sure. It's definitely probably the most diverse, or at least kind of covers a wide spectrum of everything I've done. I had a blast doing that stuff. And if I would have probably been in Massachusetts, we probably would have been a little more active. Like I said, just a lot of the guys had just, full-time jobs / life stuff that we all kind of were dealing with. So we knew we weren't going to go all in, but I think if I would have been close, we would have kind of probably done some more with it. But the record wise, I'm absolutely blown away with what we were able to do, especially the way we did it. And like songs, like the cover of that song Mountain, just, vocal wise for me, that was probably the most fun I've ever had in the studio doing something like that. Because with Shadows Fall stuff, you always had the kind of, we're part of the music business pressure and stress hanging over you, whereas with Downpour, like we didn't really care. We were recording it on our own anyway, and then we were going to try and see if we could get it out, so it was just kind of a different feeling as well, which was nice after 15 plus years of knowing like, all right, man, we got to get this record out, done, and then back on the road type of thing with Shadows Fall. So
is that something you think down the line guys might try to do again, and not wait 15 more years?
Yeah, we have this. Yeah, exactly. We have the skeleton of songs to do. Are you talking about Downpour? Because we have more material. Yeah, we do have like the skeletons of probably like 5 or 6 more songs that we've recorded a chunk of, and then have demos of the other ideas. So hopefully, it's. This time would actually, if the one bum out about being trapped at home right now is my whole home studio is just in shambles or just super outdated, like old, So like, I would probably be working on it right now, but I have to record it into like this phone or into GarageBand at the moment. So,
speaking of Shadows Fall, do you ever get tired of people asking you all the time if something is ever going to happen?
No, it's cool that people are still interested. And honestly, we've been trying to figure out a way to play some shows and work it out. Schedule wise has been pretty tough just with Anthrax, Overkill, and Matt's been busy on and off with Act of Defiance and his own studio and things like that. Me and Paul are working, we're working full time. Now it's real hard, like we had some framework rolling to try and get some things kind of to the next level of really, moving forward. And now it's all just at a standstill. So, but we really do want to play some shows. We really stopped playing just because logistically it was getting harder between guys playing in other bands, and then also just financially, if we wanted to survive, we were going to have to like tour 10 months out of the year like we always did, and we just kind of weren't at that point right then. I was having a kid, then had a second kid, Paul had a kid, so it just became too tough. But as far as playing together, we were never like broke up because we didn't want to do it. We just, it didn't make sense at the time. So.
Well, speaking purely musical, what do you think your favorite Shadows Fall record or era was?
Oh, it's tough. I've recently listened back to Retribution, and I think that's probably has some of my favorite performances on it. But like the War Within era, just that whole time in the band will always just be crazy. Honestly, the Art of Balance in the War Within era were just chaos for us as a band. Like it was the most insane, fun, whirlwind, crazy time. And also we were at like that kind of creative level where we knew exactly what we wanted to do with every step. And then, so it was just, a different kind of thing then. It was still just sort of unfolding in front of us. So that'll always be a special time. But musically, man, I think Retribution has some of my favorite stuff.
Like you said, whenever Shadows Fall ended, everybody else kind of went into another like touring project, and you stepped back. Like, was that you just kind of deciding to take a break for a while? Or?
Yeah, like I said, my first kid was born, and I was still on the road, and I was, watching her kind of grow up on Skype, and was just getting a little bummed on that. We were plateaued as far as how big we were getting, and we weren't really in a position to kind of push to the next level. Just like we were gonna have to keep grinding, and I just was missing too much time at home. Physically, my body was beat up from 10 years of swinging a stupid amount of hair around and jumping onto people's heads like an idiot. So I was just fatigued and just kind of burnt out, and the last few tours just kind of felt a little more like work because of the missing the family and things like that. So it's funny, like if you're like in that upper echelon where like you're touring where it's flying in, flying out, staying in nice hotels, you can bring the family, all that. Like Shadows Fall, we were gonna just be grinding like like a bunch of pirates, like in dirtbags, like we always were. So it's just kind of once you kind of realize that, I was like, it's been a fun, but it's time to take some rest. And then honestly, John had such a great opportunity with Anthrax that he really wanted to pursue that, and he was balancing both for a while, and that was getting tougher. And we were lucky to have a great filling guy with Felipe, who's an amazing player. But even he was ready to have a kid and move back to Venezuela. So that, it was just, we also didn't want to have that like touring version of Shadows Fall and then like the, real version. And it was already starting to happen. It seems to happen in metal more than any other genre. Yeah. Where all of a sudden you see a band, the next time they come through town, and you're like, who the fuck are all these dudes? Which always blows my mind because metal's so hard to learn. And then you hear these dudes who've been in like 30 bands in like a year and a half. And like, how did you learn all that stuff?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, got off topic there. But so yeah, it was just time to come home for a bit. And it's funny how we became the like minor leagues for some classic thrash bands where all of a sudden I turn around and John's in Anthrax, Matt's playing with the dudes who just left Megadeth, and Jay's in First Flotsam, and then Overkill. I'm just like, damn, dude, like when is Exodus calling?
Death Angel, Exodus, Testament.
Totally, it's hilarious, man. There's now the ex-members of Shadows Fall, which already were like this New England, New York metalcore kind of like Alphabet Soup at the beginning. Where between me and Bittner and John and Paul, we were all in a bunch of bands, but now it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, from the I've listened to Hell Night. You've got the hardcore part of it covered, and they can do the thrash.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. That's why the other thing with Hell Night is I wasn't going to just start playing kind of like a thrashy metal band again. I was like, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it with the Shadows Fall guys, even if it was part time. So the fact that it was a more punk hardcore, like with like just they're honestly at the end of the day, they're really like rock riffs that we just inject with like this down-tuned weird guitar tone and just manic energy, and it gets crazy. But if you probably slowed them down, you're like, oh, they're just ripping off like the James Gang and Blue Oyster Cult, but they're just doing it really sloppy fast and tuned to B.
Well, I love the 1 minute 50-second songs. That's like my favorite shit.
yeah, exactly, man. In and out. So it's before I can overthink the lyrics. It just get me done.
All those bands we just mentioned, Anthrax, Overkill, Act of Defiance. Have you had a chance to see any of those guys in those bands?
Yeah, all of them. Yep.
Okay.
I've seen Anthrax a ton, and John kills it with him. For him, it was such a perfect fit because he was born in the wrong era anyway. He's a total glam metal shred thrash dude. Like that's his roots, and his just style fit perfect. And then as far as Jason was Overkill, like he was the fanboy for Overkill. They called him the Kid back in the day because he was always backstage driving them crazy. And then once we started, kind of getting more well known, he'd always be bugging them to sit in whenever we went and saw him. He was that guy. So he was so stoked to get that spot. And it's honestly the same even before that with Flotsam. He was a huge Flotsam fan, so he was super psyched to be able to do that for a little while. And then now the Overkill thing but for his style, honestly, for me, like his style with Overkill is perfect. Yeah. I've only gotten to see him play once, and it was here, and the kids came out to sound check and got to sit on his kit and stuff, so it was pretty rad.
Well, you mentioned your hair every night at a show, and something just hit me. I mean, are your neck muscles like when you're touring, like insanely strong?
Yeah, but also, yeah, my neck is just a disaster. Like I've tried to really been taking care of it these days because at the time you don't think about it and the adrenaline is there and, but man, I would wake up so many mornings on the tour bus and it was just so brutal. And you'd roll it out and it just sounds like you're stepping on a bag of potato chips. It's just like snap, crackle, and pop, like insane. And that night I'd always be like, all right, I'm not going to headbang crazy, or at least I'm not going to do the full twirls. And then we kick in the opening tune, which is always something like Idle Hands or like some fast tune. I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And I just start headbanging like a maniac. And then it loosens it up and you get this false sense like, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. And it's just because you're numb and all the nerve endings are dying and you're like, So, yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll have to deal with the real long term. I more started thinking recently, like, I wonder how much my skull, like the brain inside the skull was moving and hitting against the front of it. And I'm like, man, am I going to like end up like finding out I had all these concussions and just thought I was like, in the moment? I'm like, no, you were actually probably hallucinating because you had brain damage, It's like, no, I'm feeling it. You're like, no, you're getting CTE,
But what's the worst thing that ever happened on stage as far as it getting caught on something or a fan grabbing or anything?
The fan grabbing thing has happened a ton, or it gets stuck under someone's arm and yanked. And I like, in retrospect, it probably wasn't always the nicest, but I like if someone pulled my hair, I would just swing in that general direction for them to like let go and like so, like hoping that I'm hitting whoever's grabbing it. But it's been stuck on light, rigs, tuning pegs, cymbal stands, everything. It's been stuck on it all.
Yeah. Well, I got a random kind of fan thing for you. Probably 6 or 7 years ago, Shadows Fall played in Oklahoma City and went down there for it. And I came up and was talking to you, and I was wearing a COC shirt from '95. And
Nice.
You offered to trade the shirt you were wearing for the shirt I was wearing, but I wouldn't do it. So
yeah, you got to stand strong on that. That was the era, man. COC back then was just a machine. Not that they're not always been killer, but man, something about that era was just so insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, indeed.
We appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. Thanks for spreading the word. And like I said, honestly, Shadows Fall, we are trying to figure out a way somehow to do some things. We may even try and figure out some random quarantine things along the way as well. We'll see. But we definitely do want to try and get active. Hell Night will be back on the horse once we're up and running, and just, appreciate the support, man.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Indeed. All right, you guys take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Stay at least 10 feet away from each other.
There you go, Brian Ferrer of Shadows Fall, Hell Night, overcast, downpour. Man, think about that. Overcast and downpour. He's just like, it must rain a lot where he's from.
Totally rainy.
Up there in New England.
Right?
Once again, glad we got to play some Hell Night. So if you're a fan of this stuff and you weren't familiar with Hell Night, hopefully you are now.
Right?
But yeah, huge thank you to Brian Ferrer once again. That was awesome. That's another one off our list of guys we've wanted to get on here. If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to us before, we've had on some thrash guys.
Well, hold on. We've had on Brian Ferrer. We've had on Mike D. We've had on Doc Coyle.
Oh, that's right.
Now we got to get somebody from Lamb of God and Unearth.
Yeah.
And we'll have the new wave of American heavy metal
covered. Yeah.
Covered.
That's a good point.
Unearth, I can see we might be able to do that.
Yeah, we can get Trevor on here next week.
Yeah, some Ken Susie, Buzz, maybe. Now, Lamb of God, that might prove a little difficult.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, maybe not Randy, but I'm sure we might get something on them.
What's Chris Adler up to?
That would be our fourth member of Megadeth.
Right?
We haven't had on Dave Mustaine, but we've had on Chris Broderick, David Elfson, and James Lomenzo.
That's right.
So, there you go. We've also had on two of the members of Battlecross multiple times. 4 times now, I think?
Yes.
We've had on, like you mentioned, Active Defiance. I said Chris Broderick a second ago. We've had on Ted Aguilar from Death Angel, which is another band that was represented pretty well in Murder in the Front Row.
Yes, they were.
As they should be. Insight. Richie Cavalera, Max Cavalera's son. If you're not familiar with his band, check them out. They're fucking relentless.
Yeah, they are.
They've got, 3 albums, or 2 albums now? 2 or 3 that are just fucking great. So look into them as well. And we've had everybody from, Kiss, Def Leppard, Typo Negative, Guns N' Roses. Sevendust, Shooter Jennings. So just dig through everything and check it out. DThunderUnderground.com is where you can find the links to all our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Speaking of thrash, Havoc's new album came out a few weeks ago, and we did a review on it on YouTube here about 2 weeks ago. So look that up as well. That pretty much covers it. You can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud, on our website, on iTunes, and all the other great places you can listen to podcasts. I think that covers it for another episode. 5 years, 5-year anniversary. Didn't think we'd do it, huh?
Happy 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you again next year. We're going to take a break now. We'll see you May 14th, 2021.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, probably not. Because in the can, like we mentioned last week, we've still got an episode with Patrick Muzingo from Junkyard coming up, Jim Wilson of Motor Sister, and Rollins Band coming up. And we've got a few that were recorded this week that this is being recorded before those, so we're not announcing it. But just look at our Facebook page if you want to find out who. So we've got 5 or 6 episodes in the can, so be on the lookout. Once again, thank you to Brian Fair, Med Farm, Sunset Tattoo, and DEB Concerts. Until next time.
I'm just escaping to a quiet room because there's 3 insane little kids around here who are going to make a ton of noise.
Thunder Underground, y'all.